Hey guys, welcome back for another video. I'm Jerry Aliberti, owner of Pro-Accel. In this short video, we're going to talk about the 5 stages of a construction company's growth. Over the past 20 years, I've worked for quite a few large contractors. Over the past couple of years, I've worked with many smaller contractors. And I'm always asking myself, what's required to get out of each stage to get into the next, if they choose to go that route. At a minimum, I would hope you would want to get out of the startup stage. So between working with contractors as a salaried employee, between working with contractors as a consultant, and also reading tons and tons of resources, I've gathered these 5 stages in a construction company's growth cycle. So starting with the first, startup stage. This is the stage where the owner does everything. Maybe they're an owner-operator. They're operating a backhoe during the day, and then they're going to be doing submittals, and they're jumping on phone calls with the owners. They're estimating. They're doing all the project management requirements. They're talking to the bank. They're going out after work hours to go meet up with clients and business develop. This is the stage where you also lack assurance. You really don't know where your next job is going to come. You don't know where your next set of leads are going to come from, right? You're pretty much living paycheck to paycheck per month, right? Cash flow is really, really low. You're trying to keep your personal expenses really low. And you're also really finding your own niche. You know, when you start your company, you think you're great at something, then you start doing it, and then you realize, well, maybe you need to pivot. So this is the stage where you're just learning a lot, and you're also doing a lot of sleepless nights in this stage. But assuming that you find your niche, you're doing good work, you're bringing in the cash flow and the profits that you originally set out to get. And now at this point, you have enough money in the bank, you start hiring a couple of key employees. You're no longer in the backhoe, operating the backhoe anymore. Now you're actually focusing a little bit more on the project management side of things and dealing more with the client rather than literally being in the hole all day long. Now you enter the stable stage. I call it the stable stage because now at this point, you feel like you're actually able to breathe a little bit, right? You got some money in the bank. You have enough money for rainy days. Now you work with enough clients where you have a good reputation, right? So now you have more of an expectation of where your next lead is going to go. You have more of a positive mindset that if this GC you've been working with gets a nice sized job, they will be calling you up. You're, as I said before, you're financially stable at this point as well. At this point, you also start establishing your initial processes that align with the company goals, the values, and how you, the owner, want things to be done. Because now you're hiring more and more people. They're bringing in their own ways of doing things. You want them to be focused on how you want things to get done. Of course, you always want to hear everybody's opinion. So now you're at the stable stage. You're here probably for a couple of years. And then the next stage is the success stage, right? This is the stage where you have really good cash flow. You got great people working for you at this point. You got a really good reputation. You really understand where you need to go and whom to talk to for your next jobs. And now your phone's starting to ring on its own organically without you having to always do outbound reach. Now you're starting to get inbound leads, right? So now you start buying assets and you start financing those assets like new equipment internally. You're not borrowing at this stage. You're buying stuff, or assets rather, based on the cash flow that you've established because you really know your niche, you really know your strengths. And you know, like how I mentioned before, you have a reliable client base as well. I feel a lot of contractors get stuck in this stage. And it's fine because I also talk to a lot of contractors who want to stay in this stage. They're making money. They're not this mega construction company that has this massive overhead. They have the right amount of people that they're managing at this point. And a lot of people are just happy with this. They're getting their 15-20% profit. Maybe if you're a really large GC, you're getting a 10% profit. But at this point, some people just want to stay here. And that's fine. But if you decide to expand and grow beyond this stage, the next stage is the growth stage. This is where there's large growth. This is where a contractor starts to acquire other companies, right? So now they need outside capital. So now they start borrowing, which should be good debt. Good debt is debt that gives you an ROI, right? It's an investment. So as I just said, you need additional capital to finance. Now the good cash flow and the financing internally that was done in the previous stage, it's just not enough. It's not enough to hire that next level executive. It's not enough to hire those larger pieces of equipment that you need to get to that even larger growth. You need new processes as well. So the processes that you established that I mentioned in the stable stage, at this point are just completely irrelevant, right? You have different layers. You no longer just have one super operating, one super in charge of 3 or 4 jobs. Now you have large enough jobs where each job has its own super, its own assistant super, its own 3 or 4 foremen. There's maybe a project executive that's overlooking each of the project managers that are in charge of each of the projects itself. So the growth stage is where people can potentially over leverage themselves and borrow too much money. You got to have a really good strategy for all of these stages, but especially for this stage, because now you're borrowing a lot of money to grow. I've also seen a lot of contractors really destroy their reputation that they worked so hard to achieve in the first startup stages. I'm going to explain to you why. They need money. So instead of paying vendors and paying subcontractors, or if you are a subcontractor, instead of paying your vendors, and worst case scenario, you're not paying your own people, it's because they need that cash to pay off their debt. And instead of giving people or honoring a net 30 days, this is the stage where they start pushing it out 60 days, 90 days. I've heard stories 120 plus days. This is the stage where contractors can potentially ruin their reputation. It's a very, very, very difficult stage, and it requires a really good strategy. So assuming you have a great strategy, everything is going well, maybe you acquired a couple of new companies, maybe you acquired some vendors, now you're in the mature stage. Some contractors can get to this stage and within 10 years, some may take 20 years to get to this stage. At this stage, the owners have great management that are pretty much running the company, right? The owners are very rarely in the day-to-day operations. They're out on the golf course building relationships. They're pretty much doing whatever they want. They got the right people in the right places. They delegated properly. And these executives and these upper management are pretty much running their company. They're focused on strategy right over here. So they're focused on maybe even more long-term growth. Sometimes in this stage, if they want more long-term growth, they go back into this stage over here, which requires to take on more debt as well. But providing that they're not going to go back to that stage, which is perfectly fine if you want to keep growing, right? Maybe your mature stage in your mind is $100 million a year contractor, and then after a couple of years, you're like, you know what, I want to get to a $250 million a year contractor. Then you go back into the growth stage, right? But assuming that you're in the mature stage, you're good, you're great, maybe you're a multi-generational family, you're getting ready to pass it on to the next generation, you want to sit tight in this stage, right? At this stage also, you have low debt and can dominate the market. At this point, you have no debt, you have enough cash flow, you got great people giving you reliable results and profits on your projects, and you just have low debt. At this point, maybe you can do what you were doing on the previous stages and use internal cash flow to continue to acquire more smaller contractors or buy better equipment. But you have low debt, you're really stable, you're really mature, you got a great bonding capacity, right? Because eventually as you grow, you need bonding. So being able to actually work your way to these 5 stages and get to this into this mature stage is really important, and it's certainly something that you would want to applaud yourself for. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like. I would love to hear your comments and subscribe.